June 27, 1942. Norfolk House, London. Major General Dwight Eisenhower arrives to take command of the European Theatre of Operations. Trailing him, in a Navy commander's uniform that does not match anything around him, is a man named Harry Cecil Butcher. Butcher has no military experience worth the name. He spent the last decade running a Washington radio station. He is here because Eisenhower personally requested him. Within 48 hours, the new commander gives Butcher an order that no other staff officer receives. Keep a diary. Write down everything. The pairing makes no sense to anyone watching it. Eisenhower commands an army theater. Butcher wears navy blue. Eisenhower has spent 30 years drilling for a war he is only now fighting. Butcher has spent the same years selling radio advertising. Yet from this moment, for the next 3 years, the two men will be inseparable. They share quarters in London. They share a cottage at Telegraph Cottage in Kingston. Butcher screens Eisenhower's mail, manages his press, opens his car door, and at night plays bridge with him until the general can sleep. The official title is Naval Aide. The actual role has no name in the regulations. To understand how Butcher came to be standing in Norfolk House that morning, you have to go back 16 years to a small office in Washington where a junior army major was looking for someone to publish his article about military preparedness. In 1926, Butcher is 24 years old, 2 years out of Iowa State College, and editing a small trade journal called the Fertilizer Review. The major who walks in is named Eisenhower. The article never runs. But the two men leave the meeting friends, and over the next 15 years, through Washington dinners and quiet correspondence, that friendship hardens into something deeper than military rank. By 1933, Butcher is vice president of the Columbia Broadcasting System and manager of CBS station WJSV in Washington. In March of that year, he is preparing a press release for a new president's radio address. Butcher writes a phrase that has not existed before in American English. He calls the president's speeches fireside chats. The phrase enters the language within weeks. Franklin Roosevelt uses it for the rest of his life. By the time Pearl Harbor is bombed 8 years later, Harry Butcher is one of the best-known broadcasters in the country. And his friend Dwight Eisenhower is one of the most obscure brigadier generals in the United States Army. By June of 1942, the Army has called Butcher up. He is commissioned a lieutenant commander in the Naval Reserve. He could have spent the war shuffling paperwork in the Communications Division. Instead, Eisenhower writes a single request to the Navy, and Butcher is reassigned to the European theatre as a naval aide. The order Eisenhower gives him on arrival is unusual. Most commanders do not want a daily written record of their decisions. Eisenhower does. He tells Butcher exactly what to do. Capture everything. The meetings, the arguments, the doubts, the men he must say no to. Eisenhower wants the truth of his command preserved before the official histories rewrite it. Butcher takes the order seriously. Every night, in longhand, he writes the day's events. Conversations with Eisenhower, with Marshall, with Patton, with Bradley, with Montgomery, with Churchill. He records what Eisenhower eats, what time he goes to bed, the names of his 3 Scotty dogs, the state of the general's stomach when intelligence reports arrive from the Soviet front. The diary grows. By the end of 1942, it is hundreds of pages. There is one problem. The diary is now a security risk. If it is captured during the North African campaign, it would tell the Germans everything about the Allied command. Eisenhower's solution is methodical. The trusted secretary types each page. The typed sheets are bundled, sealed, and put aboard a Navy courier flight back to the United States. There, they are locked in a safe and remain unread until the war is over. The handwritten originals stay with Butcher. In 4 months, he produces 250,000 words. By 1944, he has produced over 500,000. Stephen Ambrose, the historian who later wrote the definitive Eisenhower biography, calls the Butcher Diary the most important single source for the European campaign that exists. Eisenhower does not know it yet, but he has just licensed his closest aide to write a book that he himself will read with rising fury 4 years later. The arrangement is intimate in a way that is hard to imagine across a modern command structure. Eisenhower confides in Butcher because Butcher cannot threaten him. Butcher is not a West Point graduate. He commands no troops. He competes for no promotion. He is a civilian in uniform whose only job is to be useful to Eisenhower the man, not Eisenhower the general. He listens when Eisenhower says he is too tired to think. He pours the drinks when Eisenhower says he cannot sleep. And he writes it all down midnight in his own hand while the general is asleep in the next room. June 5, 1944. SHEF Advance Headquarters, Southwick House, Portsmouth, England. The decision has been made. 156,000 Allied soldiers will cross the English Channel within hours. Eisenhower walks alone to a quiet corner of the operations room. He pulls out a small pad. In 1 minute, in pencil, he writes a single paragraph he intends to release if the invasion fails. The note takes responsibility entirely. It blames no subordinate, no plan, no weather. It assigns the failure to himself by name. He folds the page. He puts it in his wallet. What happens in the next 60 minutes is not in the official record. If this is the kind of history you want more of, subscribe. We are just getting to it. Butcher is in the next room. He sees Eisenhower's hand go to his wallet. He has seen this gesture before, Eisenhower folding paper into his coat as a discipline against his own memory. Butcher does not ask what the paper says. The next morning, after the landings have succeeded, Eisenhower will forget about it. The note will stay in his wallet, then his desk, then a drawer in his office at HF, then a footlocker shipped back to Washington. Butcher will write it down in his diary that night, a single line. He has put a private message in his pocket. He does not know yet what the message contains. He simply knows the general has prepared for failure. The invasion succeeds. The note is never released. Years later, when Eisenhower is sorting his wartime papers for the new presidential library in Abilene, Kansas, an archivist finds the folded sheet in the bottom of a footlocker. The pencil has barely faded. Butcher recognizes his own diary entry from June 5th. The line he wrote at midnight in his cottage at Portsmouth is what allows the archivist to date the note to the night before D-Day. Today, the in case of failure message is the most photographed single document in the entire Eisenhower library, known by historians as the most honest sentence any commander has ever written about himself. Butcher's diary is the only reason it has a date. By November of 1944, Butcher is promoted to the temporary rank of captain. He has now been at Eisenhower's side for more than 2 years. The Battle of the Bulge is 2 weeks away. Eisenhower will not sleep properly for the next month. Butcher writes everything down. The conferences with Patton at Verdun, the argument with Montgomery over command, the moment Eisenhower throws a pencil across his office and tells Bradley, in language not fit for the official histories, what he thinks of being second-guessed by London. None of it will appear in the Eisenhower memoirs. All of it is in Butcher's diary. May 7th, 1945. Reims, France. A schoolhouse at the Rue Franklin Roosevelt. 3 minutes past 2 in the morning. The Germans sign the surrender. Eisenhower is not in the room. He does not want a photograph. He has sent his chief of staff, Walter Bedell Smith, to do the signing. Butcher is in the corridor outside. He watches the German delegation walk past him to the schoolroom door. He notes the exact time. He notes that Eisenhower, alone in his office 2 doors away, drinks 1 glass of champagne by himself, says nothing, and goes to bed. The war is over. Butcher does not know it, but his role beside Eisenhower has 11 more weeks to run. By July of 1945, Eisenhower is preparing to return to the United States to become Army Chief of Staff. Butcher's commission expires. He goes home to his wife and daughter and starts opening the boxes of typed diary pages that have been arriving in his Washington basement for 3 years. He counts roughly 911 pages in pieces. Simon & Schuster, the New York publisher, offers him a contract within a month. The Saturday Evening Post buys the magazine's serialization rights immediately. Butcher writes to Eisenhower for permission. Eisenhower replies that the diary is Butcher's to use. He adds no warning. He suggests no edits. He does not ask to read the manuscript. The book appears in June of 1946. The title is My 3 Years with Eisenhower. The publisher prices it at $5. The Saturday Evening Post has already run 6 installments to 20 million readers. Time magazine reviews it the week it ships. The review is titled Backstage with Butcher. Time calls the book good-natured, modest, and largely without insight. It says Butcher has written down the anecdotes but missed the man. The reviewer is being polite. Inside Washington, the reaction is sharper. Eisenhower's brother Milton reads it and tells the general that the book makes Eisenhower look like an ordinary man. Eisenhower is preparing to enter politics. An ordinary man cannot be president. The historian Max Hastings, writing 40 years later, is less polite. Hastings calls Butcher the embodiment of all gossip-ridden staff officers. The phrase is the verdict that follows Butcher into the history books. He has captured Eisenhower with a closeness no one else managed, and the profession of military history will spend the next 2 generations holding it against him. The closeness is precisely what makes the diary essential. The closeness is also what makes it disqualifying. Eisenhower writes Butcher a polite thank you note in late 1946. They do not meet again as friends. When Eisenhower runs for president 6 years later, Butcher is not invited to the campaign. It is worth asking what Butcher had done wrong. He had recorded what Eisenhower told him to record. He had published with Eisenhower's permission. The diary is, almost line for line, the document the general asked for in June of 1942. The answer is not in any single passage. The answer is in tone. Butcher writes about Eisenhower the way a friend writes about another friend, with affection, with private jokes, with descriptions of moods, with notes about his health and his temper and his weakness for cheap detective novels at the end of a long day. The presidency is not built on those details. The Eisenhower of the campaign trail of 1952 cannot afford to be the Eisenhower of Butcher's diary, so the diary is not denied, it is simply set aside, and so is the man who wrote it. Butcher does not protest. He does not write a second book. He takes the royalties from the first, which, by some estimates, reach $250,000 $1946, equivalent to roughly $4 million today, and he buys a radio station in Santa Barbara, California. The call letters are KIST. It broadcasts at 1340 on the AM dial. He moves his family to the Central Coast. He plays golf at the Valley Club of Montecito. He owns the station for the next 25 years. He never publicly discusses Eisenhower again. In 1953, while Eisenhower is in his first months as President of the United States, Butcher and a group of investors apply to the Federal Communications Commission to build a new television station in Santa Barbara. The commission approves the construction permit on November 13, 1952. The station signs on the air the following summer. The call letters are KEYT. Butcher owns 14% of it, inside the original studio on what is still called TV Hill above downtown Santa Barbara. The station broadcasts a portrait of its founders. Butcher's photograph hangs alongside the rest. The man who wrote down Eisenhower's 3 years of war is now a small-market television executive in California. The general is in the White House. They do not speak. What Butcher does have while Eisenhower runs the country, is the diary itself, the handwritten originals, the typed carbons, the drafts of the book, the Saturday Evening Post galleys, the letters between him and the general from 1945 and 1946. In July of 1969, 8 months after Eisenhower's death, Butcher signs an instrument of gift and deposits the entire collection at the Eisenhower Presidential Library in Abilene, Kansas. The papers fill 22 boxes. They include the original in case of failure notes filing history. Today, no serious history of the European War is written without consulting them. The book that Eisenhower set aside is the source the historians cannot. Butcher's daughter Beverly grows up in California with the diary on the family bookshelf. In 1978, she runs for Congress from Maryland's 6th District and wins. Beverly Byron serves 7 terms in the United States House of Representatives. She sits on the House Armed Services Committee. She talks publicly, at times, about her father, about the man who recorded Eisenhower's war and then opened a radio station and never asked for anything back. She is still serving in Congress when her father dies on April 20th, 1985, at the age of 83, in Santa Barbara, California. Captain Harry Cecil Butcher, United States Naval Reserve, died on April 20th, 1985. He was 83 years old. He is buried in Santa Barbara Cemetery on the bluffs above the Pacific Ocean, 2 miles east of the radio station he owned for a quarter century. The phrase he coined in March of 1933, fireside chat, is still in the American dictionary. The diary he kept under Eisenhower's order is still the single most cited primary source for the European Command. The television station he helped found in 1953 is still broadcasting from TV Hill in Santa Barbara on Channel 3 every night of the week. The naval aide to an army general. The radio executive who taught a president how to talk to the country, then taught a general how to be remembered. The man Eisenhower trusted to write down his war and stopped trusting the moment the war was written down. The friend who lost a friendship to a book that the friendship had made possible. He is not in any movie about Eisenhower. He is not in any documentary about D-Day. He is in 911 pages, in 22 boxes, in Abilene, Kansas, the man without whom no one would know what Eisenhower said in the dark. If your father, your grandfather, your uncle, anyone in your family served in the European theater of operations under General Eisenhower during World War II, in any branch, in any unit, leave their name and what they did in the comments below. Don't just leave the name. Tell us one thing about them. One thing they did, one thing they said, one thing you remember. The men who were there deserve more than a name in a database. They deserve to be remembered as people. Subscribe if you want the next chapter. There are more of them.